So it's Deep Images. We're back. And today we're going to talk about Italian cinema. It's like the Japanese cinema show we had. It's not like a monolithic thing of like, we know everything about Japanese cinema and we're going to cover every single genre and every single important milestone because that would take
That would be a
years.
whole entire podcast in and of itself.
Right. We would have to have a spin off. But I will say, I was pondering this. I haven't even told you guys, my compatriots. I was pondering this before the show. I don't know what term I'll arrive at, but I'm going to add a word to it because Italian cinema is really broad. I thought about every single movie we're going to do, and I was like, I'm not necessarily going to use this word, but idiosyncratic. These are all very idiosyncratic films. They're very visionary films. They're very auteur films. Most of them were very transgressive and controversial. So, you can count on the Italians. Their films, are spicy like everything else about them. So I have a little cheat thing here called my phone, and this is going to be Wikipedia. So don't blame me. I'm quoting Wikipedia, but we didn't have time to cobble together a good introduction. And our introducer is not able to make it tonight. Justin Cotton, wherever you
We
are,
love you,
baby.
man.
We love you, baby. All right. So the cinema of Italy comprises the films made within Italy or by Italian directors, as I explained to Keith the other day. Italy is one of the birthplaces of art cinema, and the stylistic aspect of film has been one of the most important factors in the history of Italian film. Okay, and then they go through a bunch of number kind of crunching stuff. The history of Italian cinema began a few months after the Lumiere brothers began motion picture exhibitions. So they were early on the game. That's me talking. The first Italian director is considered to be Vittorio Calcina, a collaborator of the Lumiere brothers, who filmed Pope Leo the 13th in 1896. The first films were made in the main cities of the Italian peninsula. These experiments met the curiosity of the general public, encouraging operators to produce new films and lay the foundation for a true film industry. In the early 20th century, silent cinema developed, bringing numerous Italian stars to the forefront. In the early 1900s, it lists some important films. I won't list the years on all this, but Last Days of Pompeii, Otello, L'Inferno, which I highly recommend if no one's seen it.
Mhm.
The first feature film about going to hell ever made. Quo Vadis and
Sick.
Cabiria, of course. Yeah. Which that
Obligatory double lines.
Cabiria obviously not only had a huge influence on like the Peplum movies, but obviously on Fellini too. It says most of these were adaptations of books or stage plays. The oldest European avant-garde cinema movement, Italian Futurism, emerged in the late 1910s. So they were before German Expressionism, which I didn't know
Hmm.
until I read this. Thank you, Wikipedia. After a period of decline in the 20s, they were revitalized with the arrival of sound film. A popular genre during this period was comedies or commedia all'italiana. And then there was this kind of like art terms. Like when I studied art, there was tenebroso and sfumato and chiaroscuro, which everyone knows. So there's the same thing with these kind of waves. So there was one called calligrafismo. This was in sharp contrast to the comedy ones. This is rather artistic, highly formulistic, expressive in complexity, and deals with contemporary literary material. While the fascist government provided financial support for the nation's film industry, notably the construction of the Cinecittà studios. I didn't know that either. Um, I did know the largest film studio in Europe. Um, it also engaged in censorship, and thus many Italian films produced in the late 1930s were propaganda films.
My
The end of
favorite.
Yay! The end of World War II saw the birth of the influential neo-realist movement, which reached vast audiences through the post-war period, launching the careers of Luciano Visconti, Roberto Rossellini, Vittorio De Sica. Neorealism declined in the late 1950s in favor of lighter films, such as, once again, Commedia dell'Italiano, and directors such as Federico Fellini and Michelangelo Antonioni. So, as actresses, this is cool. Actresses such as Sophia Loren, Giulietta Messina, Claudia Cardinale, Monica Vitti,
Be
Anna
still my heart.
Magnani, and Gina Lollobrigida achieved international stardom during this period.
Mhm.
From the mid 1950s to the end of the 1970s, comedy, and many other genres arose due to auteur cinema. So that's kind of the area we're covering today. Um, Italian cinema reached a position of great prestige both nationally and abroad. The spaghetti western achieved popularity in the mid 1960s with Leone's Dollars trilogy, which featured enigmatic scores by composer Ennio Morricone, who composed 400 of these movies. So every other movie you bump into from this period that's Italian, it's probably got Morricone's music. If not, I could name the other like 5 or 6 great composers that you'll find. Um, and then Italian thrillers or giallos, produced by
Yes.
directors such as Mario Bava and Dario Argento in the 1960s and 1970s, influenced the horror genre worldwide. During the 1980s, okay, well, anyway, that's the
My other favorite. All right,
yeah.
cool.
It's cool. We can end in the late 70s, but we'll come back eventually one day, but not today. So I believe I chose
I'm first up this time.
you are first up. Okay.
All right, cool. So the first film that I want to talk about this evening is made by one of the greatest directors in Italian cinema, Bernardo Bertolucci. And so I'm going to be talking about The Conformist, which is one of my all-time favorite films. I really, really love this one. And I actually discovered this film when I was in college because one of my majors was languages. And so I studied Spanish and I studied Italian, which is also why I know so much about Italian and Spanish cinemas and Latin American cinemas.
Yeah.
Um, and basically, we had assigned films that we watched. There were several of them, and then we had to choose one of our own to do a project on. And so I picked this one because I was reading about, what are some of the greatest Italian films and the directors and everything. And I wanted to pick one that I thought I would really enjoy watching because I didn't want to like sit down, try to watch it, end up hating it. So when I found The Conformist, I read that it was basically about a fascist member of the secret police who is told to assassinate somebody who is important to him, who is an anti-fascist. I was like, that sounds fascinating. I want to watch this. So that's how I decided to give this film a go. Um, so The Conformist is kind of a thriller, noir, political drama type of film. I love that we're actually getting to cover a drama because I know we do a lot of genre on this channel, and I love it. I absolutely love covering genre films
We did
too.
pretty
But
well on Japanese
we
with the drama.
did, yeah, yeah.
But of course, part of the course, our mostly all drama episode is like got the least views.
Yeah, well, hopefully people like to hear about fascism because there's a lot of fascism in Italian cinema. There really, really is. Um, and that's one of the reasons I picked this film as well as one of my other ones is because the fact that Italy had, it's the country of origin of fascism, not that it's like the origin of authoritarianism in general, but fascism
Right.
specifically is an Italian political like perspective, I guess is a good way to put it. So it originated in Italy. And as such, that period, the fascist period, had a tremendous influence on cinema. As Henry was saying in the introduction, there was, the fascist government actually funded a lot of stuff in cinema, and then that influence continued well past that, because this film came out in 1970. And basically Bertolucci wanted to explore kind of that era, I guess, is a good way of thinking about it. So the film stylistically is done very similarly to 1930s German films, which I find really interesting. It has a lot of that aesthetic. Everything is very dark. The colors are kind of muted, but everything is also very bold stylistically. Things really stand out. It's very beautiful, but also very severe to look at. And it really shows the relationship between Germany and Italy. Very early in the film, you see the protagonist Marcello speaking with his friend, and his friend is a blind man, and he's giving this speech. You see him reading in Braille, moving his hand across the pages, giving a speech on the radio, and he talks about how there's like a Latin part of Germany and like a German part of Italy, and how they're like this, hands together. And it's really, really interesting to me, just the relationship between those two countries during this period. And also since then, and the way that those two countries have become very vehemently opposed to anything bordering on fascism, because they're like, okay, we're learning from this history. We are not going to repeat this mistake. So I find that really interesting. But for the story of the film itself, Marcello is basically he wants to be in the secret police for Mussolini. He's ordered to assassinate his former anti-fascist professor, Professor Quadri, who is living in exile in France. And he's a very vocal dissident. So Marcello goes to accomplish this task. He meets up with Quadri and his wife. They have very friendly interactions. And throughout the film, during this time when Marcello is deciding how to handle this, what to do, is he going to be able to assassinate this man that he really respects or not? You see throughout his life, he's always been somebody who conforms to the expectations that society sets before him, no matter what they are. He has no principles
He talks about
whatsoever.
it in the first few minutes at
He
that
does, yeah.
gathering,
Yeah,
and it's the people around him, I think he's not necessarily only because he's a nonconformist, but I mean,
yeah. Mhm.
just saying,
Well, a
"Am I a
conformist, but yeah.
nonconformist?" in front of all these people, it's like that's so
Yeah.
awkward. He's very awkward about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, yeah. So he's really always conformed to what's expected of him. He did that in school. He did that in his marriage and his relationship. He marries a woman named Julia who's Catholic, and so he has to go to Catholic confessional and all of that. He's an atheist. He doesn't actually believe any of it. He's lying through his teeth.
Mm.
But he goes to this confessional, and because you have to do that to be able to get married in the Catholic Church, and that's just how it is. That's the rules. So he does this because he really wants to marry her. And is it because he's in love with her and thinks she's wonderful? No, it is because she is painfully normal and he wants
Mm.
a normal life, whatever that means. And one really good quote in that scene that I really like that I pulled out is I intend to construct my own normality. So he does that by picking this woman who is, as he puts it, all bed and kitchen, which yikes, very sexist. Don't love that. But it really speaks to the mindset of the character. Um, and so he goes through all this. He also has a lot of trauma in his life. He was sexually assaulted as a child by a young man. Um, and so there's a lot of stuff with sexuality in this, which is also very common in Bertolucci films in general. It's one of the themes that he explores a lot. There's also same-sex stuff between women in the film as well, because Julia and Quadri's wife are Anna are interested in each other as well. There's like this wonderful sexual tension between them.
How could you not be
Um,
interested in Dominique Sanda? I
I
mean,
understand. I am. I get it.
yeah.
Beautiful, gorgeous, gorgeous woman.
Okay, go ahead.
Um, so yes, so he has the sexual trauma, also trauma from gun violence, because this guy that sexually assaulted him when he was young, basically like pulled a gun on him and was just like, wordlessly, it's just like, you understand now, kid, like I'm gonna make you do this or I'm going to shoot you. And then Marcello gets a hold of the gun and he shoots the guy, he shoots around the room, and he's traumatized. He's just killed a man, as a child. He looks, I don't remember exactly how old he was supposed to be in this, but he looks like, maybe like late elementary school, early middle school, like age, roughly, maybe like 10 to 12 or something like that. And it's just like, my God, that's gonna really mess anybody up.
Mm.
So he went through all of that. It's really traumatized him, and his entire life he's felt like the guilt of it, and like not really being sure of himself. And so that's why he just does whatever people tell him to do. So once we get back to the present, where he is in France, has to kill Professor Quadri, he is deciding what to do about it. He ends up ultimately betraying them, but isn't the one to actually kill him. He lets his friend actually be the one to do that. And then at the end of the film, the way that it ends is after World War II has happened, Mussolini has been, overthrown and everything. Things are back to being good again, not fascist. He just immediately throws all the fascists under the bus because, again, not because he has any like moral sense whatsoever. It's because that's what the thing is now. He has moved on from being fascist because it was convenient for him and it was normal and the right way to be in his society,
Mm.
to being the opposite and being like, oh, my friend actually is the one who killed the Quadris, both the professor and his wife Anna. And that's how it ends. So he has all of this interesting arc where you get to kind of see what, like, psychologically why he is the way that he is. And Bertolucci is really playing with that, like the psychology of fascism, the psychology of conformity. And you see it through this character who really does not grow at all, and yet it is such a compelling and interesting film. Like the first time I watched it, and when I kind of rewatched a bit of it today, I didn't have time to watch the whole thing, unfortunately,
I
but
watched part of it today too.
yeah, I got maybe like a third of the way through, I think, and then I skipped around a little bit to kind of get some of the important scenes again. It's yeah, just really compelling from the beginning. The pacing is great, the dialogue is excellent, the cinematography is really, really beautiful.
Mm.
Um, this was also a really important film because the cinematographer for this was Vittorio Storaro, and he was also a very important filmographer in Italian cinema. He went on to work with my man Dario Argento on The Bird with the Crystal Plumage,
Wow.
also Francis Ford Coppola, Carlos Saura, and others. So
He
just
won a
really
couple of
phenomenal
Oscars.
cinematography too. Yeah, yeah,
Pretty
excellent.
sure.
Bertolucci and wow, I'm blanking all of a sudden. And Serraro as well. Yes, wonderful, lots of awards for this film. And then for Bertolucci in general, I haven't seen a lot of his films, honestly, but I did want to just mention some of the other ones because he is one of the great filmmakers out of Italy that I really want to see more of.
Mhm.
So some of his other really popular and famous films are The Last Tango in Paris, La Luna, and The Last Emperor, and a bunch of others. Also, fun fact, because I didn't know this until I was doing research for this session, he was also a writer on Once Upon a Time in the West, one of the
I
really,
Oh,
did know
really
that.
well-known spaghetti
Yeah.
yep,
westerns.
yep.
He was a
Well,
writer on it.
well,
Didn't know that. I was
well,
just
you
like,
know who
what? That's cool.
you know who his co-writer was, don't you?
Mhm.
You do know who his co-writer was? Don't
Not off
spoil
the
it,
top
guys.
of my head because I can't memorize information like that for the
Uh,
life of me.
Dario Argento. It was Dario
Nice, nice,
Argento and
nice, nice,
Bernardo
nice.
Bertolucci
Yeah. Gotcha,
who
gotcha. That's
wrote the
awesome.
screenplay. Yeah.
Yeah. I details like that do not stick in my
No.
brain. If I ever just cite something like that, it's literally because it is in my notes. It does not come from in here. It does not ever.
You know a lot.
Yeah, but The Conformist, excellent film. Really, really love it.
Okay.
Henry and I were talking about it when I was kind of trying to narrow down my picks for this one. I was like, oh, I think this one will be okay. It might be a little too mainstream. You're just like, do it anyway. It's a great film. And I was like, all
Mhm.
right, cool.
I wanted to mention about it because Dwayne and I were actually talking about Bertolucci before you
Mhm.
guys came on. Dwayne, for those who don't remember, is our technical director, executive producer. He's only appeared in one episode of The Old Boy. Go watch it immediately. So
Yes.
Dwayne and I were talking. He has not seen Last Tango in Paris, but he has read a lot about it, and we were talking
Mhm.
about kind of the Italian film industry during this period we're talking about. Dwayne used to work in Hollywood film. Well, he worked at the Wilmington studios that Dino De Laurentiis founded here in North Carolina for a
Oh,
while.
nice.
Yeah, through the 90s. And so the thing is about this movie, while I was rewatching it, by the way, I forgot a couple of people who worked on it, and this is the kind of stuff I usually remember. I do remember this weird
You do
arcade
remember
machine.
these details. You just drop them, and I'm like, how do you hold all of this in your brain?
Well, yeah, I've noticed once you learn stuff, you know it pretty damn well. I don't sell yourself
Yeah,
short.
okay.
Um, but yeah, Storaro shot it, and yeah, he shot the Crystal Plumage same year, but I don't
Hmm.
know which one came first. But the
Hmm.
uh, the guy, the assistant director, and I didn't know this till today. I didn't squint enough at the little. By the way, the font for the opening titles is absolutely gorgeous. I'd like to use it
True.
on one of our videos. And all of the architecture's Art Deco, and like you said, German expressionism as
Hmm.
well. And it is just who made these buildings? Are these real buildings? How many of these are sets? It's like this
Hmm.
just
You can't
austere.
tell. It's
It's almost
seamless.
futuristic looking. It's just,
Yeah.
but I think it represents wealth, the wealth which the fascists,
Yeah.
grabbed hold of. I could be wrong. It could represent, Bertolucci's like, no, it represents science fiction. But the assistant director was Aldo Lado, and Aldo Lado, I'm actually friends with
Hmm.
him on Facebook. He's about 85 now. He directed a number of, not many, but some very cool films. Giallo's mainly Short Night of Glass Dolls is really a
Hmm.
wild movie. Really a
Oh yeah, that's a
better
good one. Mhm.
Giallos. Yeah, the premise is really, really tense. And he directed Who Saw Her Die, which is also amazing about child kidnapping. and George Lazenby, not long after being Bond, but
Mm.
he's in a beard with long hair. He's great. He's the frantic dad. Um, and I believe he did a couple spaghetti westerns I like. Those two stick in my mind like immediately without looking at something. But I was
Nice.
like, I was like, because I exchanged words with him once, just once, and I'm fanboying. But he like assistant directed The Conformist. I had no idea.
That was really, really
It,
cool.
it's kind of like when you find out Ruggero Deodato was the assistant director on Django, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Whoa,
Mm. Makes
wow!"
sense.
Yeah.
So also the editor on this was Franco Arcali. Now I'm going to be talking a lot
Hmm.
about Franco Arcali because one of the things I want to cover, he was a major collaborator with, but in this case he was just the editor, but he's an incredible editor. But so what I was kind of talking with Dwayne is these people pop up in each other's movies
Yeah.
in front of and
They
behind the
do,
camera
yeah.
a lot. And I'm not saying Hollywood maybe isn't like that. It probably is, but you're looking at this one little period in this one country that a lot of people aren't really that familiar with. And you start to see all these connections. And I'm one of those people who's all about all those hidden connections and how so and so did this. And I like calling out artists by name that I like. I
Hmm.
like knowing their name. I like giving them props.
Yeah.
So
That's something
kind
I'm
of
trying to get better about because even though like, and for me it's my ADHD. It's just really hard to remember those details for me sometimes. I'll
Hmm.
be like, what's that director? Their name is on the tip of my tongue. Or who's that actor? Their name is on the tip of my tongue. Their face is in my brain. I cannot tell you their name for the life of me until I Google it. But I am trying to get better about at least checking on these things so that there's a chance that I'll remember.
Hmm.
Because, like you, I really like the reason that I love film is for the artistry of it. And I've talked a little bit like behind the scenes on the podcast about how I might not have seen like the most films out of everyone on here, partly because I'm younger. There's also that.
probably the only reason, really.
And I don't know about that.
No, I mean
But
that's not
I
bad.
tend
I
to
mean
go no,
that
but I
gives you.
tend to go really, really deep with fewer things. So it's like, I did as much research as I could on this with the time that I had. And, this is a film that I'd seen before and enjoyed rewatching. And same for the other film that I'm going to talk about next after this one. And just, yeah, I may not have like as wide a net, but I tend to like really zoom in on the things that I do love and be like, oh, this one is really, really amazing. So just different ways to do things, And I think
Well,
that
Yeah.
there's no wrong way to be a fan.
no,
And I think
Hmm.
no,
that's just an important
That's true.
thing.
no, there's not. Somebody said that the other day on something profound that I watched. When I remember it, I'll
Oh,
tell
cool.
you. There's no wrong way. Oh, it was this
So I can't
music.
remember all these names and stuff, and you can't
You know
remember
what it
this one
was?
for me.
It was that music channel I put you onto about the really sexy girl with the up harp and all the effects
Oh
pedals.
yeah.
Emily,
Nice.
and she starts
Hmm.
talking at the end. She does an awards. It's called the Emmas because Emma's her first name. It's
That's
all
cute. I love
funny.
that.
And her boyfriend shoots all this, and she's a fucking brilliant musician. That's really the sexiest thing about her, really. And and not that others aren't, but that is a sexy thing to me. She's super creative. And
Hmm.
at the end of
Is
the
this
award,
the one that hooks up all her guitar effects and everything to the harp?
yes.
Okay,
Hmm.
yes, I've seen her.
Oh, she's incredible. And her face,
That's really cool.
she's like a character. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, she looks like someone drew her. Her features are
Hmm.
so distinctive, whether you like them or not. I like them,
Hmm.
but they're very distinctive.
Send me a link to that, Henry,
I
if you
will.
could.
I will.
Hmm.
It's really
Sounds
fun.
interesting.
And the
For
thing about
sure.
her is she's talking about the pedals and the sounds, and how some people are snobs about certain sounds, and
Hmm.
other people's are like, whatever. I can make this or five sound for $5, and she said it doesn't matter. And she's got a very distinctive northern voice. She said it doesn't matter. I mean, it's all okay. Everything's okay. I mean, what did you say to start this off? I forgot, but that's what she said.
Like there's no wrong way to be a fan is what
Yes,
I
she
said.
said there's no wrong way, and then she closes the
Yeah.
video.
Oh, that's precious. I love that.
So, if you were going to continue, or did you want to move to the nice?
I think the only thing that I didn't mention that I had in my notes here is he was also a protege of Pasolini, who's another one of the great names.
Yes.
Everybody knows Pasolini.
I-
So because he worked with Pasolini to learn about making film, like he had a really long career. He actually made his first film at age 22, which is insane to me because I'm turning 32 this year, and I'm just like, I haven't done anything yet.
A lot of those guys were
I'm just getting
young.
started, man.
I mean, when we're talking about careers that sometimes go back to the early 50s or earlier, and they're only 80 now, you're like, when the
Yeah.
hell did they start?
Right,
Do
right.
the
It's
math.
crazy. Absolutely crazy. Yeah, no, but one of those just very driven people who knew exactly what he wanted to do, found the right people. You know, obviously Pasolini and others, you know, saw his potential and really made it possible for him to get into that. And then he just kept on going and ran with it. And I respect that a lot.
Oh yeah, I hate to interrupt. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting.
No,
But
you're good.
yes, Pasolini. I'm going to talk about him later.
Yeah.
Spoilers. Probably won't be on this episode for those who watch these broken up. But Pasolini's first movie, Acatone or Achatone, I don't know how to pronounce it. Yeah, Bertolucci recounted a story on camera about that, or something I'll talk about later. I didn't know that. I knew he knew Pasolini, but I didn't know he like basically interned on Acatone. I was like, oh my God.
It's really cool.
The thing is funny is, and what you just said, is he learned a lot from Pasolini, but you know, Pasolini himself knew no formal cinema vocabulary. He was a poet and a novelist, and he was winging it on Nakatoni, and he more or less created a style. So it's interesting that had such an effect on someone else, especially given that Bertolucci's movies are so much more stylish, you know. But I think it's that spirit that Pasolini passed on.
Yeah. I also really love just that like self-taught thing in the arts, and especially in cinema, because cinema, I like arguably I think is probably one of the most, if not the most gate-kept art form. It is so hard to like get into that world if you don't have the right connections or education or wealth or whatever it is that you need to be able to get your foot in the door. And that's true for I think filmmakers and writers and actors and composers and all of it. It's just insanely difficult. So the fact that Pasolini
it's like the comic book industry,
like that's such a cool thing. Yeah,
the comic book industry is worse. Believe me,
it's true for
I tried
all
to
of
get
these
into
industries. It's really true for all of these industries, but I mean, film especially, just to me, seems like one of those things where it's like, if you're not in it, how even do you begin to like get into it? I just cannot conceive of that because so much goes into it.
Well, now you know why I have heroes like Melvin Van Peebles and John Cassavetes and Herschel Gordon Lewis who just said, "Fuck you, I'm just gonna do it."
Yep.
Just gonna do it.